Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to broadcast. Tonight, we are talking about inhabiting the public square. We have two guests, Robin Vincent and Thom Lynch. They're from Hill Church in Swansea. Both of them tonight will be talking about their project called Matthew's House. And I would really like to welcome them. So first we will see Robin. He will start talking. Then Thom will join us. They will talk for about half an hour, and then we will have some questions. So please put your questions in this first half an hour. Anything that comes to mind, I'm sure they will be happy to answer it. So that's all from me for now. If we can welcome Robin.
Okay, guys, can you hear me okay? Is that good? Am I on? I hope I'm on. So I'm just going to quickly give some context really for the title of the talk, which is Inhabiting the Public Square. I think that title came about from a conference we attended last year in June, a leaders conference in Milton Keynes. And the guy Bob Roberts was speaking, and he used that phrase, inhabiting the public square. The way I kind of understand it is this: that churches are meant to be a force for good and a force for the gospel in the location of where they live. And that is certainly really the prayer that we prayed right at the beginning of the Matthew's House journey, that we would be a force for good, a force for the gospel, and have the resources to do something in our city. And the context for Matthew's House, and I'm only going to spend a few minutes on this, and I'm going to let Thom just unpack how it all works and why the city is engaged with us. But the context is really quite simple, in that we believe that the Bible teaches that in Galatians 2:10, we read that the church, the early church, whether they were speaking to Gentiles or Jews, had a heart for the poor. In other words, there is a conversation that goes on and says that if you've been entrusted with the grace of God, if you've got the responsibility to preach the gospel, then you should also be eager to remember the poor. And personally, I've always been really, really stirred by the proverb in 19:17, which says that if you give to the poor, you lend to the Lord, and he will repay you for what you do. So for us, the journey has been an amazing one in terms of Matthew's House, in that in doing what we've been doing, we've attracted the attention of the BBC. We're actually on BBC One. It's actually on iPlayer at the moment. We were on BBC One this last week, and we've attracted attention from ITV and media outlets. So we've been on national news, and we've been in the local news on several occasions now. And the basic principle of Matthew's House is built around a real simple concept, which is this: that in the book of Matthew, 28 chapters, there are 4 verses that Matthew gives over to his own personal testimony, and they are in Matthew 9, verses 9 to 13. And what happens is, this guy, he ends up following Jesus, and he brings Jesus back to his house, where there is every kind of person is attracted to this guy's house, and they are amongst Jesus. And Jesus says to them, or says to the Pharisees who are asking, why does Jesus hang out with these kind of people who are the beaten, the broken, the bottom of the pile, the bruised, the battered? He says, why does he hang out with these kind of people? Is the Pharisees' accusation. And Jesus says, don't you understand? I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And really, there for us, one thing we've drawn out of Matthew's story in that chapter 9 is this: that Jesus was willing to be around people in a compassionate way, yet he was never compromised. He was around people in a compassionate way, and he was never compromised. And in the midst of being around those people, he basically exampled what hospitality should look like to us as Christians, as Christ followers, and he also brought hope. And so for us, we've called our building in the centre of the city, Matthew's House, Hospitality and Hope in the Heart of the City. I'm now going to hand over to Thom, or hopefully it will now go over to Thom, and he will explain and unpack the project a bit further.
Hello. Is it all working? All good? Brilliant. Thank you for having me and things like that. Thank you, Robin. When we talk about Matthew's House, often we get so excited about it every time we talk about it. And so I've been limited to a little bit of time at the moment. So yeah, we're just going to share a few things. One of the things is Matthew's House. What is it? It's a big, lovely building in the heart of Swansea. It's probably on one of the roughest streets in Swansea. It has a lot of crime, prostitution, substance misuse, and all things like that. And in the beginning, when we started, we were a church that was excited, and we just wanted to do something, share our love for Jesus and people. So yeah, we got together in someone's house one day. We ended up basically praying about a load of things, and God was in it from day one. And it just happened to be that over a period of time, God just surprised us in ways that we could never imagine, and it enabled us to purchase this lovely building. So because of the Matthew 9:9 story, we just felt it so applicable to call it Matthew's House, because we want it to be a home where people come into, they can meet Jesus, but anybody's welcome, no matter what they're going through, the circumstances they've been through, going through, or going to be going through, that they're welcome to come into Matthew's House. So how it works is it's set up as its own initiative. So the Hill Church has led it, has started it, financed it, but we set it up to be its own initiative in Swansea. So it's accessible for everybody, whether you have a faith or not. The idea is we want to give hospitality and hope in as many ways as we can. So we've spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, just loads of things on the project. We've prayed that God's in it throughout. And one of the beautiful things is throughout of it, we've just had so many prayers answered, knowing that God's with us in the whole project. So Matthew's House, and then what we do in Matthew's House is we've opened projects. We've got loads that we want to open, 2 already that we've opened in the last 15 months, the journey that we've been on. And one of the projects we have is called Matt's Cafe, which Robin mentioned. It was on the BBC on Tuesday, which has just been a bit insane, really, really exciting. We've been on the ITV, working with colleges, universities, schools, local businesses, companies, other charities around us, and it's because of the projects that we've built and we're using to deliver that hospitality and hope. So Matt's Cafe, very successful volunteer-led project. Basically, we intercept food from all over Swansea. Currently, we started this week, and today was our second collection from Lidl. We get food from Marks and Spencer's, Tesco, Nando's. We get stuff from local farmers. We get stuff from fishmongers, market stalls, all places like that. And people just give us the stuff that they aren't able to sell, and it's still really, really good stuff. So we collect it. We've got an army, we call a family of volunteers. Currently, it's over 70, of which probably about 30–40% of them have a faith, and the rest don't, which is just unreal on its own. And then we make lovely meals and we share it with people who need it. So since we've been open about 15 months ago, we've served 15,000 meals, and we're only open 3 days a week. We've given out loads of food parcels, so it's not something we do, but it's like going the extra mile again. So we've given out over 100 food parcels to people in extremely difficult circumstances. One of the other projects that we do, with Matt's Cafe then, in order for people to come and enjoy it with us, these lovely meals that we make, we've made it pay as you feel. So we've joined with the Real Junk Food Project, taken their model and used it for Matt's Cafe. So if people don't have the finance to eat, then they can still come and eat lovely meals of us. And really, there's always food there. There's always stuff to take as well. And the idea is we just want to feed bellies, not bins. So that's Matt's Cafe project, which is quite exciting. We've got the Homeless Period project, which is dignity packs. We collect sanitary items, hygiene items, make lovely little packs and give them out to people. We give them out to organizations and everything like that. So those are 2 projects. We've got loads of others we want to start up, one being a buddy service, one being a laundry service, one being a shower service. We just want to give hospitality and hope for our little home in the city. It's quite a big church, old church building, but we call it our home, and we want to share that with the city. So when we're talking about inhabiting the public square, it's just been insane. When we had the building and we opened it up, there was already people that felt welcome into the building that we were newly part of and newly taken over. It was as if they were welcoming us, and that's the community around us. And since then, since that day, it's just been more people joining on, more people joining our volunteer team, more guests coming through the door that we're able to support and help and guide and influence in a positive way. And it's just incredible. And I think what's been a real eye opener for us is we're in it, and it is sometimes about location. It is about going to them, going to people who need us, rather than waiting for them to come through our doors. And what we found as a church is we've got 70 volunteers that a lot of them don't have a faith, but they're already in the church building. And that's been the church's biggest issue, is getting people through the front door. So we've got hundreds of people now that feel welcome in our home. So when we do stuff that involves, like the church does, so outreach stuff, it's so easy to welcome and say, look, come along, you know where it is. So there's loads of really great opportunities that we've had with Matthew's House. And it's just been really exciting. So some of the highlights for us, we went to a church festival recently, and one of the guys that came with us was with me in the early days, building stuff, fixing stuff in Matthew's House, and he didn't have a faith. And because of his volunteer on Matt's Cafe and some alpha courses that we run, we ended up baptizing him this year, and then he came with us to Catalyst. And it's just been incredible to see this guy grow and become a real man of God. But we are getting opportunities after opportunities. And like Robin said about being on the BBC and ITV, we're getting local businesses come to us. And how we're seeing it is we've now become a bit of a platform where people can offer their time and their skills and things like that to get involved with the project, knowing that it's run by the Hill Church. It's financed by the Hill Church mainly, but also by a group of people that give regular donations monthly. And these people, there's so many opportunities where people are coming to us because we're in the public square. So just over the road, we've got a university, and Matthew's House is now part of the curriculum for them. They have to organise an event, fundraise, and deliver the money to us in order to pass their business course. It's just insane. But just today, many of you will know that this week is Volunteers Week. We've been part of a few things this week. We were able to give out awards to people who have been with us for over a year. Many don't have a faith. But today we run an event with Swansea City Volunteering Services, so the group that oversees a lot of the volunteering organisations around Swansea. And we hosted an event that was a celebration for all the volunteer organisations all over Swansea. And there was literally tens and tens of groups of people. There was probably about 50, 60 people with a representative from all different charities. And we hosted it. And we've only been around for 15 months. And it was an absolute privilege to be part of. And I got the ability to stand up in front of all these people that wanted to know more and just basically say the story, share how Matthew's House is about, share why it is about, share what we want to do and why we want to do it. And there was loads of people listening. And it's about inhabiting the public square. It's about meeting people. And if you asked if this was something that we planned and it was going to go this way a year ago, then we probably would have been like, oh, I don't know how it's going to be. But it's just been an incredible journey of loads of things. And 2 months into it, last year, we had our first little thank you card. And on that thank you card, the message said, to Matt's Cafe, thank you for the food from a hungry person. And those are the moments, there was no other thing on it. It was just that, plain and simple. And those are the moments where you realize we're doing a good thing and we're meeting people. And recently we were sharing a time of probably about 2-3 months with a couple that was sleeping on the beachfront in a tent, completely homeless, waiting for this and that. But they felt welcome with us. They kept coming and they gave us a thank you card when they left. And it was really, really soppy, really, really lovely. And as soon as they found out they were getting a home, we were the first people they wanted to share that with. And it's those moments that you can walk alongside people and help them and support them and do those things that people trust you. People ask you why, what are you doing? What are you spending all your time doing this stuff about? And those are the beautiful moments where you can get involved really into people's lives. So yeah, Matthew's house has been an incredible journey. Those 2 thank you cards, in between that, we have had hundreds of stories. One lady at the moment, she spent 4 or 5 months with us last year, and she was amazing. She applied for a grant for us, and we ended up winning £2,000 to build vegetable beds, and she's just gone to university. But her life has been 20 years living on benefits, without any education, without even a job. She never worked in 20 years. And she's got 7 kids. And she's been through a whole lot of stuff. And that same woman who had no faith and is now going to university because of the support that we've put in working alongside of her. In the last few weeks, one of her really close friends, has got leukemia. And she is texting me every night, asking the church for prayer, asking the church for support. And it's those moments that wouldn't be possible without the work of what Matthew's house does. I could go on, I could absolutely go on for ages, so please ask loads of questions at the end. I want to pass it over to Robin now, so I'm not too sure how that works, but Thom, could you pass it over to Robin? And thank you very much for having me. I hope I didn't speak too long.
Okay, guys, I think I'm back now. Thank you. Thanks, Thom. So I just want to now finish up really by sharing some principles or lessons that we've learned through this process of the last 15 months. Well, really, it's probably going back 2 years actually and a bit, because it took us a long time to actually get the building that we're in. But actually, before I do that, I just wanted to share 2 particular stories that, for me, that have made a real impact on me, and they're both this week. One was a volunteer on our WhatsApp group put this after watching the programme on the TV. Just watched the programme, so proud of the team, and to play a small part is one of my proudest accomplishments. Like so many who pass through those gates of Matthew's house, I've struggled with mental and physical health, and I can honestly say being part of Matt's Cafe family is a lifesaver. And that just has humbled me, that story. And another one was on Sunday after speaking, a lady came up to me who was she's a visitor at Matthew's house. She looked fairly smart, fairly in good order, as it were. But she came up to me and she just asked that she actually said she was in recovery, and she wondered whether I would be able to help her get some food. And when we gave her a food parcel, she actually started to cry. She hugged me and kissed me, which is unusual for me. And secondly, she hugged and kissed one of our volunteers. And so it's just, again, to me, that's demonstrated, and maybe this is the first lesson that I've learned, is the sheer power of hospitality. Hospitality runs through the Gospels, it runs through the Bible, and we should not underestimate the power of hospitality in our community. So that's the first principle would be good to share. The second principle that would be good to share as well is that actually this idea of being not only a force for the gospel but a force for good is entirely biblical. I would point you, if you're not aware of these things, but to the promise that was made to Abraham in the book of Genesis by God, to not only be a nation that is blessed with the gospel but also be a blessing for the nations, in other words, a force for good. And also in Titus 2 you read a wonderful account of the gospel in about verses 10 to 14, and right at the end it says, and be zealous for good works. So we should be, as the churches, have a real motivation not only for the hospitality side of things, but to be a force for the gospel and the good. Another principle I'd like to share is this idea that for us, we never planned this. God took us to the corner. You know, over the years, I've been a church planter, and there's a good little phrase I learned some years ago from a guy called David, and he said, you know, as a church plant, you're only meant to be a bakery. You don't become Tesco straight away. In other words, don't bite off more than you can chew. But however, there is another side to Christianity as well that I would say, in any kind of church plant or any church, which is this: we need to be people who listen to the voice of God. I love the story in Mark 4, where just before the calming of the storm, where Jesus says, let's cross to the other side. They're going to the other side of town. They're going to the rough part. They're going to the place where people are living without hope. And there's a sense of when you get that nudge from God, you should go to the other side and be willing to go. You should be willing to go to the corner and not have it all mapped out. Another principle we've learned is, and I use this phrase, that we should have our oil lamps topped up. One of the mistakes we made, I believe, in the early days of the Hill, and therefore we weren't ready, really weren't ready for what God would do. It's a bit like the 5 foolish virgins and the 5 wise virgins. They go out to meet the bridegroom, and the 5 wise ones have got their oil lamps topped up, and the 5 foolish ones have not. When the bridegroom turns up, or just before the bridegroom turns up, the foolish virgin's oil runs out, and they have to go off and go and buy it somewhere. And for me, God really spoke to me about that, about having your resources ready for when Jesus turns up. I think too often as churches or charities or whatever you might find yourself being, we have this obsession with spending our money, believing that if we've been given it, we should immediately spend it. And I think there is a more important principle about being an excellent steward of our money and being in a position ready for when Jesus turned up. And I felt like a reflection on Matthew's houses that we were caught unawares. We weren't as ready as we could have been. And we actually had to rely somewhat on other people's generosity. We saw the provision of God, but we had to rely on other people's generosity as well to get us into the position we were in at the beginning. Another principle I want to share is that we identified a need in our city and we opened it up to our city. In other words, we've never said that we were going to do this for our city. We've always felt that we were to do this with our city. In other words, we opened up our arms knowing that we were Christians. We knew that we had compassion. We knew that we'd be uncompromising in who we were, and we have always invited people to join us and asked them not to be uncompromising in who they are. We believe that we will be a witness for Jesus in our very lives, in our words, in our actions. We don't need to get people to compel to believe a certain set of things or whatever it may be before they work with us. So we've always opened our arms up to the city, and we will work with people for a common goal of eagerly remembering the poor. Off the back of that, then, another principle was that we have learned is that we have created a community on the back of a crowd. So what we discovered early on was that we had loads and loads of people who wanted to work with us, who wanted to hear from us, and we have therefore got probably, I would argue, a crowd of about 400 people that want to hear from us every month or in regular contact with us. And we've got a community, probably about 100 people or more now, maybe it's even 200 people, who effectively we're trying to build a community with them. So we use the term Matthew's House family. We have WhatsApp group, we have volunteer nights, and we love being with them, and we hope that they love being with us, because we are just people with a common purpose of hospitality. We have a desire to bring hope into people's lives. Obviously, as Christians, we talk about having a hope that goes beyond the grave, but everybody believes in some form of hope. Everybody's got hope for tomorrow if they're operating, in a way that means their life is together. And so we just have that common ground. We built a crowd up and then a community off the back of that crowd. And that is just a real good principle to remember, really. Another one is we've never hidden our Christianity. So we early on decided that whilst we would separate out Matthew's House in one form, and I'll talk about that in a second, we would not separate Matthew's House out from the church as a charity, but rather it would all come under the church. And the reason we did that is because whilst we recognised that some people would want to buy into what we're doing, either in time, talent or treasure, because if they didn't know we were Christians, we just felt it was better for us to be transparent about who we are. We want people to be themselves, and we want to be ourselves. So we've never hidden our Christianity, and simply we've focused on that common ground of remembering the poor and building relationships with people just like anybody else would in the world. The thing that we have done, which I think has been really helpful for us, is we separated out the bank accounts. Quite early on, I think, grasped the idea that people would want to give us money for the work of Matthew's House, but they wouldn't want to necessarily feel that they were funding the other activity of the Hill Church. And so we deliberately, right from the beginning, separated out the bank accounts so that any money given to the work and development and maintenance of Matthew's House and the advancement of Matthew's House would go direct into this single account, and therefore we would not be compromised, and we would have great clarity with our city, and we would be full of integrity. And so that's been really, really helpful. Another principle that I've learned over the years, and I've applied here in Matthew's House, and it again has been incredibly invaluable, which is this: keep my eye on the numbers. I really do spend a lot of time keeping my eye on the finances. I think it's a massively spiritual activity to be a person that really understands the finances of what we're doing, really understands where the money's coming from, how we're using it, whether we're being full of integrity, whether we're operating with transparency. And so I can't emphasize enough. I think too many leaders can fall into the trap of thinking it's not spiritual, and therefore they almost defer the management of the finances, or they defer the analysis of the finances to others. And I think that's a mistake. And I think as good stewards of the finances that God has given us, and we will give an account for them, we really should work out smart ways for us to keep an eye on the numbers. And I think the final thing I'd like to say is probably just, maybe it's just re-emphasizing what I said at the beginning, was that we didn't have it all mapped out. We've never had it all mapped out. We've often been playing catch up with what we feel God is doing. But we've always sought to just keep listening to God, keep praying for his grace. It's not been easy. We recognise at times we've had some people who are, I almost want to call them people who are enemies of what we're doing. Some people don't like what we've done. But generally we found the city has loved what we've done, and we're just trying to be the most transparent, good character, people of good character, and do a good thing in our city. So those are the kind of principles I want to share. So I think it's over to you, Radha, now for any questions. Thanks.
That is brilliant. Thank you both very much. I really, really love hearing about Matthew's House and what you guys are doing, because it's just like you show so much passion for it, and it really inspires us to actually, you know, think how we can do what we can do where we are. But Robin, could I just please ask you if you could tell us a story? How did you get Matthew's House in the first place?
Okay, so basically, I'll advertise the BBC programme that we've just been on. It's called Britain's Charity Cheats, which doesn't sound like a very good TV programme to be on, especially off the back of what I've just said. But basically, the building before was a real hub and place for the poor, run by another charity called the Cyrenians. Unfortunately, the finance officer of the Cyrenians stole all the money, a significant amount of money, and this charity went bankrupt overnight, and the building came up for sale through the receivers. But we didn't really know that, or I didn't particularly know that at the time, and I'd been particularly stirred about a lack of opportunity for young men in the city following a conversation with someone, and I used the phrase "I was provoked within," which is a kind of reference to Acts 17, where Paul walks around the city of Athens. And so on that particular night, I felt the prompting of God really to go down to another church building in the city that was derelict and up for sale, and lay my hands on it and just pray, God, give me this building to make it a force for good and a force for the gospel, and the resources to do that in this city. And I did that twice. I laid my hands on two of the doors, got back in my car, thought, well, if that never happens, I'll never tell anyone, but if it does, I'll do a story, and who knows, maybe one day I'll be on broadcast with Radha and I'll be able to tell that story. And and the truth of what happened then was basically within 6 weeks of that happening, there were a number of things that happened around money at that time, but within 6 weeks somebody said to me, have you heard about this building called St Matthew's on the other side of the city? And I went down there, and the difference between St Matthew's and the building that I'd laid hands on, the building I laid hands on probably needed about £2 million worth of work and was up for sale for about £400,000. And the building of St Matthew's that we ended up buying, and it now is Matthew's House, is right in the heart of the city. £2 million worth of work had already been done on it, and it was on for a very, very low price. And so we just saw the provision of God in that, and I really do believe with all my heart that that was an answer to the prayer that I prayed on that door that day.
Absolutely. And could you tell us, either of you really, how long did it take you from the first when you actually acquired Matthew's house, and then the process of getting the idea of what you want to do with it until you opened Matt's Cafe?
Okay, I probably answered a few bits of it, and I'll leave Thom to answer the bit about the cafe maybe. First of all, it took a long time. It took about a year to get the building because we were dealing with, I think it was because we've got a long-term lease of a 90-year lease on the building, which, as my son says, he'll be dead when that runs out. So I thought that puts that in perspective. So it took us about a year because we were dealing, I think, with 3 sets of solicitors. And then when we got the building, there was a lot of sorting out to do and a lot of hours of work. And it was only when I was raising funds for the building, trying to get the money together to actually buy the thing, a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, he challenged me as to what, he loved what I was talking about with the poor, but he really challenged me as what I was going to call this thing. And it was really during that week I prayed and I felt God speak to me about the Matthew's house idea, which has a great irony because Matthew himself was a dishonest finance officer, which, as I say, if you watch that BBC One programme, Britain's Charity Cheats, you'll realise that Mark Davis, the gentleman concerned, sadly, was also a dishonest finance officer. Then once we got that idea of Matthew's house, I'll now hand over to Thom and he can tell us really, you guys, how we got Matt's Cafe kicked off.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so it was March last year. When we had the building, even though it took ages to get it, we then spent probably 9 to 12 months getting it up and ready. So there was plaster coming off the walls, there was loads of painting needing, there was loads of sorting, all different things like that. And there was just loads of people. So our church service was bring a packed lunch on a Sunday, come at 8, leave at like 5, and just bring some dirty clothes to get involved. And we may sing a song. It was brilliant because loads of us pulled together. People really got excited about what we were doing and committed so much. And then it got to a moment where I think we were all quite excited about Matt's Cafe. But just before that, we were still wondering what to do in this setup phase. Me and Robin, a friend of ours, had heard about the Real Junk Food Project, which is an organic franchise where they intercept food waste and make lovely meals, because we wanted to be something sustainable and not kill ourselves doing it or kill the project. Apologise for that. That's food collections actually from Matthew's house, so it's quite applicable. Anyway, yeah, so we decided to investigate, and we found one about an hour away from Swansea. Went up there, and on the way there, we were both overwhelmed with just life. I was lab manager in Port Talbot Steelworks, fostering, youth work, chemistry degree. Robin was doing loads of things as well as running a church, full-time job, family, all these things. So we were in this car for an hour thinking, I'm hoping it's going to be a nightmare, so that we wouldn't have to commit. And then we went there, spoke to the guy, had a meal, went to the loo afterwards, and we basically just said it'd be morally wrong not to do it. So we got excited, put a management team together, got even more excited about it. It was probably about 6 or 7 of us, and then decided probably at the end of 2016, this is what we want to do. This is how we're going to do it. Let's call it Matt's Cafe, the branding, all that stuff. And then we decided, well, let's just open. People weren't giving us food at that point, and we didn't have volunteers, but we just felt on our hearts. And it's definitely, we knew God was in it because of the providing and everything else going on. And we just felt, right, let's do some Taster Mondays, see how it goes. After the second one, it just went insane. We had offers for food, we had people come and put volunteer applications in, and basically went from there. So 3 days a week we're doing now, and 15,000 meals later, and here we are. So.
Brilliant, yeah. Well,
can I just say something? Sorry, just to say, because I feel like Thom just shared our bowel movements or something at the end of our time when we were looking at the project. The relevance of that is we were actually standing at the urinals, and I said to Thom, well, what do you think then? And he said it would be morally wrong not to do something. So that's the relevance of the toilet bit of that story, which otherwise gets slightly missed if we don't have that.
Thanks, Robin. When you started Matt's Cafe, did you actually dream that you're going to be reaching so many people? Obviously, your heart was for the poor to start with. So the idea is, to feed the poor, to, mend the broken. But did you think that it's going to take off like this?
Go on, Tom.
Okay, I was waiting for his nod. That's what that was. No. So when we started Matt's Cafe, I did my utmost best to stay a little bit of a distance and just fix the whole building. So because I worked in the steelworks, I had 4 days off at a time, but then 4 intense working days. So my time off wasn't the same time off as everyone else. So I'd get some friends along and we'd do the painting, building, fixing, applications, social media, things like that. And I was trying, even though I loved it and it was amazing, I knew my capacity levels were getting maxed out. So when we first started, I was just a volunteer and it wasn't my job and it wasn't my life. But as it started, it just became my life. And it was at a point where I rinsed all my annual leave in a couple of weeks. And we had to make a decision, well, Robin and the leadership team, that we needed someone to run this. So the decision in that I made was I can't do both, So anyway, that decision, Robin and the leadership team put together and asked me to be project manager. There was some, obviously we had to think about it, and it was quite a shock in a way as well. But now my wife looks after me, which is really, really lovely, and allows me to do the stuff at Matthew's house and make it part of our lives and things like that. And to answer your question, no, we didn't think it would be as successful as this. I don't think we actually thought about the success. We just thought about the need, and that's what we wanted to do. So working with the city, again, identifying the need, the nights needed, the people who need it, and things like that. Yeah. That's what we focused on.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit, how did you engage the city actually? Because that would be interesting for people who are thinking of maybe doing something like that. So what if a church planter wanted to do something similar? What would you do? What would you advise them actually to do?
Okay, I think, yeah, okay. So I would say we probably as churches don't realise that we do things really, really well. Over the years, I've put various different events on as a church, and I've had people leave those events and say, that was fantastic, that was the highlight of my month, my year. And in one sense, I've been a little bit thrown by that. I'm going, really? Wow. So I think people are more isolated. They don't have the community that we have often, not always, obviously, that would be unfair, but more. Sometimes I reflect on the very idea that people will come around my house who are in the church, and they will, well, most people who are in the church who say they come around my house say I don't make them a cup of coffee, which doesn't do a good advert for hospitality. But what I do say is they know where the coffee and the cups are, and they put the kettle on, and they don't even ask. And I think over the years I've noticed that friends of mine who are not in that kind of community really are taken a little bit aback by that kind of sense of belonging and family. So I think one way you can engage the city is by being a family, but opening your arms up and out to people and saying, look, you can be part of what we're doing. Actually, we're quite good at being organised. We're quite good at planning things. We've got a great visionary as our leader, not the church leader, but Jesus Christ, and the Bible gives us incredible wisdom, incredible insight, even regarding dealing with conflict and things like that. So I think what we're really saying is the best way of engaging the city is to find something that you can do, and it will be unique to every location, and say, how can you open that up that the world might see the way you work and operate, as opposed to just hear what you speak about on a Sunday, but rather that they might get exposure to the things that the Bible talks about as being really important for human flourishing. And for us, we thought we've got a bit of a an opportunity in this building. We put up a banner right from the beginning that said we've saved this building. There was loads of media activity about who would save this building. So we put a banner up immediately saying we saved this building. Give us a moment, please. We're all volunteers. Give us a moment to kind of find our feet. But if you want to get in touch, drop us an email and we will keep you on the list. And immediately we started getting people contact us. We've had the privilege and blessing, I guess I can't pretend we haven't, of a graphic designer in our midst who's got a love for the poor as well. And he has probably helped us go to another level in that he has just given us hours and hours of his incredible talent to make what we do look good. So, if you've got a good, the culture we live in now is very visual, and so people do judge a book by its cover. So we look good before people have even looked in, and that's been helpful as well. But I'm not sure that's really the pull-in thing. I think the pull-in thing has been the powerful message that we've got of doing something for other people, and people really aspire to that. And when they touch that and then they encounter the community, they are gradually drawn into that and love it, absolutely love it. So that's, I think that's answering your question. I hope so, but feel free to seek clarification.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you then about the church, because obviously you attracted people from outside the church. How was it? Have you taken everyone on a journey with you? Was everyone on board with the project, or was there some people who weren't so enthusiastic?
Definitely the latter, to some extent. I mean, a friend of mine, a wise guy I know, said, when you move location or you take the church in a slightly different direction, or in our case in quite a very different direction, you're changing the destination of the bus and people might want to get off, and I think you've got to make allowance for that. So we realised that. Secondly, we were engaging in a battle. We believe the Bible talks about life being a battleground, not a beach where you sunbathe. And we found that there were some circumstances where we would say a foothold was already gained in someone's life and we lost them quite early on. And that was quite tricky and difficult for us. And then other people gradually got involved. The truth is you're always discipling people and you're taking them on a journey to follow Jesus. So some people got it straight away. Some people got it because they were just servant-hearted. Others thought there was 100 other people doing the work. They didn't need to do it. They weren't a decorator. Why would they need to decorate? I think they didn't really know there wasn't even 100 people in the church, but that was their understanding at the time. And as the more, in fact, they got involved, the more they realised, wow, there wasn't 100 people involved. Gosh, and they missed an opportunity maybe to not be involved. So we've had a real mix. But one thing we said right from the beginning was, the Hill and Matthew's House are not the same. In other words, Matthew's House is an initiative of the Hill Church. It is not the Hill Church. You can belong and be part of the Hill and be part of that community and follow Jesus and be faithfully a member of the Hill and not really take any interest in Matthew's House whatsoever. And so we've maintained that, believing it's better to have people who want to build that area of the church with you and not worry about the others, because that's fine. Not everybody's called to do what we're doing, and not everybody's meant to do it like the level that we do it. We understand that, so we're gracious in that.
When you were talking about before about some people, were opposing you, did you mean mainly from the church, or was there some opposition from the people outside as well?
People didn't oppose us in the church. I mean, people had questions and they had concerns, and often the mistake one can make, I suppose, is you've carried this for so long yourself, you forget to take other people with you along the journey. So the issue there is primarily communication and clarity and allowing people to have questions and doubts and to gradually adopt what you're doing as well, rather than buy in straight away. One of our excellent leaders, a real pillar in the church, he's more cautious than I am, and he would be therefore more questioning of the decisions we were making early on. And I used to initially, I knew that would kill my faith a bit if I wasn't careful, but he wasn't. That makes him sound worse than he was, but he would be more negative or more questioning, which was a strength for his as well as a weakness. But you can make the mistake of thinking that guy's not with me, but actually, again, I knew he was with me. His finances, his time told me he was with me, and I had to remind myself that he was simply trying to do what was good for the church and good for me by challenging it at times. So that was within the church. Outside the church, we've definitely had some people, not many, look to undermine what we've done, look to be, people are suspicious. I mean, it's so silly because we've never hidden our Christianity. We're not trying to be somebody we're not. Tom, do you want to just briefly, maybe, I think if you can, share that occasion of somebody just trying to secretly film and all that?
Yeah. So what we've had literally thousands of people that we've been able to get in contact, but there are the couple that you can't help, you try to the best of your power, but you just can't, and there's a season for everyone, I believe, as well. But this one incident was a lady in her 50s, I believe, and she just got a little bit fed up, a little bit disgruntled about what we're doing, and didn't understand what we were doing. That's what it felt like halfway through. But the incident was she was very rude to volunteers, and a lot of our volunteers, what people don't know is there's many that are really vulnerable themselves. I think we've all got vulnerabilities. And there's some, like Robin mentioned, that message, where there's so many vulnerable people, not just the guests, but in the team. Anyway, this woman, we've got rules, we've got house rules, as any house would, and she was, verbally abusing, like rude, just really difficult. And after a warning, just to say, look, this place is run by volunteers, she still wasn't understanding, and she still was very difficult. So sometimes we have to do the thing that kills us the most and ask people to leave, and while doing that, while talking to this woman, she basically come in the building at the end of the day, started filming, from what we know now, on her way into the building with her iPad. This is someone, obviously vulnerabilities herself and going through a really difficult time with the world. And I think just looking for someone to take it out on. So she had this iPad, and she was videoing herself talking originally, and then coming up the path, going into the building. And what she was looking for someone that wasn't there at the time, another guest. She ended up putting her iPad down, recording on a bag, and then hid in the toilet for 10 minutes, trying to catch us out doing something. Well, I think the only thing that was there was one of our volunteers who doesn't have a faith, was so thankful to someone that she used the swear word in her thanks, like, you flipping legend, but not using the flipping word, as you can imagine. And then, so I needed to speak to her and talk about that. So we talked about it, and at the whole time she's picked up this iPad and she's filming me without even knowing. And the way I know now is because she put it all over social media, all over Facebook. But just to say, it was probably about 16 minutes of footage of me telling her the reasons, trying to explain the project to her, trying to explain why we can't have that bad attitude and bad behavior and all stuff like that. And the whole time she's filming, and then there was hurling abuse at me, and these names, and it's just so difficult. But I think for me, I had a really good moment in it all, and I think a load of times throughout the project is I know who I'm doing this for, and it's not just the individuals in front of us, but I'm doing it for Jesus, and I'm trying to be as close to Jesus as I can in the lives around me. So I just try my best, as best as I could. Anyway, after my skin, going up, because I was gutted, I was, my blood was boiling, I was angry a little bit, not even knowing it was being filmed at the time. And then it went on to Facebook. Sometimes it could be good, these times it could be bad. But we now got it as a training video, because what happened was she put it on Facebook. Other people got in touch with us because they felt she was at fault, and they absolutely loved the video, and they're now following us, subscribe to the website and what we do, because of the way that we acted, and I think it just shows that you never know what's going on in people's lives. There are people that are angry at the world, and they may take it out of the people there in front of at that moment, and you just got to be good. No, you just got to try your best no matter what. But there are people out there that want to catch you out, that want to hurt you, and it gets difficult sometimes.
Yeah, of course. That is a brilliant story, though. And I love that you're talking about being force for good for all. And we are here, aren't we, to bring a bit of kingdom to people around us. But could you just, both of us, maybe Thom practically and Robin, could you just explain a bit about the interplay between good deeds and evangelism, actually, and how overt are you trying to be evangelizing people, and why did you decide to do it the way that you have?
Is that me? Shall I go?
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you talk about I don't know. I think the truth is, I think that's a real westernized view of maybe Christianity, if we're not careful, isn't it? I think the more I've gone down this route, the more I've realized that hospitality is right at the heart of the Christian message. And there is a sense of, let your good deeds stand before men, isn't it? And they'll praise your Father in heaven. And, often I found through this journey, and I suspect Thom's found the same, people are saying things like, this is what the church should be like. This is genuine community. And in fact, one of our now staff members, she doesn't have a faith. We didn't require her to have a faith. She's a big fan of Christianity. So that's really lovely to hear. We've always been really careful about how we communicate. We said we have a white hot why, which is Jesus Christ. I'm an unashamed follower of Jesus. So I want people to get to know me and understand that Christ has worked in my own life, that we're all broken, battered, bruised, beaten at the bottom, really. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And while we were dead in our sins, Christ died for us. So I've always sort of felt that actually, as a church, we're not here to say, we're doing this project so loads and loads of people will come to faith. What we're doing this project is because we believe that people are made in the image of God, and we believe that we should build relationships with people and be there for their flourishing and their benefit. As a consequence of that, inevitably, the kingdom of God advances. People want to know what motivates you. They want to know what drives you. They want to know what gives you peace. They want to know why you do things like forgive people. They want to know why you are patient, kind, full of joy. I mean, I'd like to think I am full of joy. I'm not always sure I am, but they want to know those things, and they'll ask you about your white hot why. I think the more I've looked at the Bible, Titus 2 is an example, that promise to Abraham. The more I see the two are linked together. I think that's what the message of James says. We've never said that good deeds, who said, nobody's saying here, are they, that good deeds leads to salvation and faith in Jesus Christ? Not at all. But by knowing Jesus Christ, we will be a community that stands out. A bit like where Jesus says, by your love for one another, they will know that you're my disciples. Well, we do love for one another, and we do love for our city. And I just want them to say, well, there's something driving these guys that I wish I knew what it was, because it done half look attractive, and I want to taste more of it, and I want to know more about it. And that is an opportunity for me to share about the person that's changed my entire life. And that's all that we can do. Thom, do you want to say on that?
Yeah, so echo what Robin just said. I think for me personally, I spent a lot of time in Zambia when I was 18. And one of my biggest Christian teachings that I'll always hold close to my heart is I was in the shanty town, and there was thousands of young people. And then there was kids from the age of about 3 to 7. There was 4-year-olds or babies on their backs with hardly any clothes, and we were working with them and we were encouraging them, and it was amazing. And then they started singing this song, and then we were all singing it, trying to catch on. It was their language, didn't have a clue what was going on. It was one of those moments where you just say, yes, I'm going to go for it. So we were part of this kind of meeting with the young children, and what they were saying, while they had one flip-flop on and half a t-shirt and a baby hanging off their backs, was, we want to be like Jesus. And for me, that has held so closely to my heart. And I think like every day that I'm in Matthew's house and I'm working alongside these people, and what's beautiful is there's a few Christians in every little team, being massive representatives and trying to be as close to Jesus as they can. And what that does is it opens huge doors, absolutely ridiculous, because everyone knows our white hot whys and why it's set up and why Matthew's house is there. And it just, we get people asking us for prayer. You know, we're doing this and that. Basically, right, this is a brilliant story. Sorry, I do want to talk to her. But we had the church camp weekend just gone, right? And we're camping for 4 or 5 nights. So we freeze a couple of meals, right? I had some of the volunteers offer to make me a chicken curry for my church camp, and they don't have faith. And whenever does that happen, you know? And we just get these opportunities and people are asking, oh, how was it? How was it? You know? And I think being a really good ambassador for Christ is a massive evangelistic tool. From those kids doing it in Zambia to us washing the dishes, taking the bins out and mopping the toilet floors. People ask us, why are you doing that? And I can tell them why. And I think for me, it just opens huge doors. And I think being an example is what I want to do and what I want to do well. So, yeah.
And on that, Rado, can I just say as well that we you know, I would want any of our volunteers watching this would go, yeah, well, what a shock. These guys love Jesus. They talk about Jesus. Like, wow, I'm really shocked by that. Of course they're not going to say that because we've never hidden that. But we've also been hospitable to them. We said, you don't have to do that. Come and be with us. Just be around us, you know, sit a meal with us, work with us. We love it. I mean, the volunteers we've got are utterly inspiring. Utterly inspiring. Honestly, you're just incredible. And even on that video, one of our best volunteers, she shares about her vulnerability. I tell you what, that would be a good example to the church. We should be more of a church that shares about our vulnerabilities. The world would listen more if we talk like normal people and then shared about Jesus off the back of it. Yeah. So I just can't speak too highly of the guys that are with us. Love them to bits, in all of them.
That is really, really brilliant. And you're making disciples while doing that, aren't you? Ultimately, really, it's about being with people and sharing life. And then we don't have much time left. I just wanted to ask you, Robin, you mentioned about the importance of keeping your lamp topped up. And actually, that at the beginning, that was one of the problems that you identified. And what can you just give us any advice to church planters? How do we do that? How do we, you know, keep our lamp topped up?
Okay, so I mean, there's obviously what I was particularly talking about there was the resources. I think
exactly.
It's good. I had early on in the process of buying the building, I had some great advice from a guy who's a more established leader than I was, and I'd already was a guy that kept my eye on the finances in a good way and in a gracious way, not in a if you can't do it with grace, don't do it. I mean, it will kill your heart, you know, you'll just become about the money. But he said to me, you know, you should look and see what the deal is on the gift day, because he once gave £10,000 to a gift day that totaled £11,000, and the church leader in front of him stood up and said, wow, church, you've blown me away. And he sat there thinking, but I've just given £10,000 of that. And so the danger is if we don't look at our finances, we'll speak to the church in a way, we'll read the pulse of the church in entirely the wrong way. So there is a gracious way to do it without a doubt, but I think it's good to be a steward of what we've been given. So there's that sense of it as well. The other side of keeping your oil lamp topped up, I think, is being somebody who listens, or being willing to listen to the voice of Jesus. And the phrase that I use, and I shared this at the Catalyst Festival, was, you know, better to be an obedient fool than a disobedient wise person. In other words, if you think God has spoken, get on and do it. When God said to Ananias, 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 I want you to go see Paul. If Ananias had been a disobedient wise person, he probably wouldn't have gone. He said, because if I go and I get killed, everybody's going to say, what a prat. But actually, the wonderful thing about Ananias was he was an obedient, foolish person. And as a consequence of what he did, he reached Paul. And obviously, the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, that is absolutely brilliant. The last, well, actually, two more questions. One, first, practically, just tell us first, where can we look on iPlayer to watch the episode from BBC?
BBC One. If you go on to Tuesday, just gone, and it is the 9:15 programme. So it's on there on iPlayer. If you search Britain's Secret Charity Cheats, it's a 45-minute episode or 42-minute episode. And it's good to watch it all, but the Swansea part and the part about us is from the minute 30 onwards, and it's about 11-12 minutes.
Excellent.
That was pretty precise, wasn't it? That was good. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, brilliant. The last question. What are you hoping the Matthews House will become over the next 5 years?
I better answer that, Tom. Sustainable, with a good reputation, a kingdom project. We don't want it to be about the hill. We want it to be about the kingdom of God, Jesus Christ. And we want it to be something that the city of Swansea is proud of and pleased is that it's in its midst. We've often talked about, do we want it to grow bigger and bigger? And the truth is probably not. I suspect what we want to do is get it right and let Matthews House function as a home in the heart of the city. I think there is a sense of where we would say as a church that we'd love to do more other things. For example, we'd love to do some sort of second stage activity that would help people rebuild their lives beyond just what we do, which is connect with people and then link them up to other services. But I think we would be mindful of not just sort of expanding Matthews House beyond projects and being a real hub in the heart of the city, which sounds a bit small-minded, but it's not. But I think if we can do that well, then we will have more resources on which to do other things as well. Would you agree with that, Tom?
Yeah. I think sustainability is key, and doing it well. So I think when we get to, it's still a startup phase. You know, we're running 2 projects. We want to run 5 with other little special bits on them. And I think when we get to there, it's about doing it well. It's about making it sustainable and supporting the city in other ways. And definitely, it's a kingdom project. There's other churches that are involved, whether it's volunteering or trying to support us financially, and it's exciting. You know, we're open to that because it's a kingdom project.
Can I say one more thing very quickly? Is this to anybody listening? Sorry, Rada, I've taken it. I'm just going to say, it doesn't matter where you are. There are things in your town and your village and your city that are needed. It might be a play group. It might be a friend for people who are isolated. It might be some form of community choir. It might be whatever it is. All I'd say is this: let the church do it, open its doors and do it really well, and people will buy into stuff. I guarantee it. They are crying out for community. They're crying out for purpose and joy and things like that, and we love just doing it with them. It's brilliant.
That is absolutely brilliant. I just wanted to say to anybody who is thinking actually of doing something either similar or something, I'm sure that you guys would be more than happy to be contacted. So it's a Hill Church in Swansea. Robin is the lead elder, so please get him. He's very, very good at helping people, I know personally. I just want, guys, I really want to thank you for coming on. And to be honest, we could just talk for another hour about Matthews House and not get bored. But so we hope to have you back again to talk about more projects. But for now, I just want to thank you, and we'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.